Shri Radha Govinda Devi. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So let's all sing Srila Prabhupada's favorite bhajan, Jai Radha Madhav Nikunjbihari. Jai Radha Madhav Nikunjbihari. Jai Radha Madhav Nikunjbihari. Gopi Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद अंतर्गत मायापुर धाम की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, समावेश भक्तवृंद की जय। Lord, thank all good stress and devotees, all good stress and devotees, all good stress and devotees, all good to Guru and God. Today we will be reading from Gita as it is. And the verse number is chapter number 3, text number 38. The verse goes like this. Dhumena avuyate vahanir yatha darsho malena cha yathurvena avruto garva statatene dhammavrutam dhumena avuyate vahanir yathadarso malena cha yathurvenavruto garvas tathatene dhammavrutam. Word to word translation. Dhumena, by smoke. Avriyate is covered. Vahani, fire. Yatha, just as. Adarshaha, mirror. Malena, by dust. Cha, also. Yatha, just as. Ulvena, by the womb. Avruta is covered. Garbha, embryo. Tatha, so. Then, by that lust. Idam, this. Avrutam is covered. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. If fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as an embryo is covered by a womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. There are 3 degrees of covering of the living entity by which his pure consciousness is obscured. This covering is but lust under different manifestations like smoke in the fire, dust on the mirror, and the womb about the embryo. When lust is compared to smoke, it is understood that the fire of the living spark can be readily perceived. In other words, when the living entity exhibits his Krishna consciousness slightly, he may be likened to the fire covered by smoke. All the fire is necessary where there is smoke. There is no overt manifestation of fire in early stage. This stage is like the beginning of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror refers to a cleansing process of the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual matters. The best process is to chant the holy name of Lord. The embryo, covered by womb, is an analogy illustrating a helpless position. For the child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot even move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to the birds and beasts, and the smoke-covered fire is compared to the human being. In the form of a human being, the living entity may revive into Krishna consciousness, and if it makes further development, the fire of spiritual life can be kindled in the human form of life. By careful handling of smoke in the fire, fire can be made to blaze. Therefore, the human form of life is chance for living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy, lust, by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. So I'll repeat the last sentence, very important. Conclusion is given by Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, the human form of life is chance for the living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy, lust, by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. So, this is a marvelous verse that we are reading. It can solve a lot of our problems. So let's pray to the Guru Parampara so that we can discuss on this particular topic. Om Ajnanantimirandasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadameham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavasya Shri Rupam Sakajatam Sar Raghunathanikam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savabhutam Parijasaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishnapadan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhantam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanto Radha Kanto Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hariti Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Krupa Sindhubhyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So, right before this particular verse, Arjuna had asked Krishna that even though someone doesn't want to commit any kind of impious, sinful activity, how is that? It just happens by even a learned person, intelligent person. So, the reason Krishna says it's all lust. And because of the lust, his knowledge is covered, and that is why he is committing impious activities. Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? And Krishna is answering in a previous verse, Kama esha krodha esha rajoguna samudbhava mahashano mahatma vijadderaniha vaininam. The Supreme Personality Godhead says it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world. So, this calm and cruel, lust and anger, that is actually it's a chain. Because there are Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mad, Matsar, Isha, Maya, the lust, anger, greed, illusion, pride, envy, jealousy, and a split personality where there is a propensity of cheating and everything is come and have a person to commit something that he should not be doing. So even verse before, Krishna has already warned us. Indriyasya arde raga dvesho vyavastito charyamvasham agache to hasya panthino. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the contact or control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So it is very, very important that we do not come under the control of a raga dvesh. Raga is attachment and dvesh means something that you do not like. Hatred. So desire dominates by mode of goodness. Desire dominated by mode of goodness is like fire being choked with smoke. You see, sometimes we do the fire sacrifice right here, and before we actually see the fire, all we see is a smoke. The fire is choked by the smoke. Of course, as a theory, as a logic, wherever there is a fire, there is smoke. And wherever there is smoke, there has to be fire. So these are inseparable. You cannot separate them anyway. But still, the smoke cannot do what that fire is doing. We cannot get anything out of smoke what we get out of the fire itself. So that is a kind of desire dominated by mode of goodness. It's a comparison. What happens? A little glowing will set a blaze and the smoke will disappear. All you do is just blow it a little bit by a mouth, by fanning, by some other mechanical means, whichever way you want to blow the air on that, then smoke will disappear and set ablaze and the smoke will disappear. Only what you see is a fire. Right? All it requires is a little glow. So discrimination likewise drives out the thin cloud of sattvic desires and reveals Atman as it is. So discrimination means what is right, what is wrong, what to do, what not to do. Vivek, that is the word for discrimination. Discrimination in this country is used for some other purpose, but that's not what we mean. We have to segregate right from wrong. And what we should do, what we should do, what we should not do. So that kind of understanding is known as discrimination. And it drives out the thin cloud of sattvic desires, the desires dominated by moral goodness. Just like smoke will go away and it will kindle the fire. Similarly, if we have vivek, if we know what is right and what is wrong, then we can have resolve that problem and drive away the fire and get the smoke out of it. Similarly, the Maya which is created by Lord through mode of goodness in form of a smoke or in form of a desire, can instantly diminish if we want, and we can be in better position in our spiritual life. Now, second example is given about the dust on a mirror. Some effort is required to remove the dust on the mirror. You take some cloth and wipe it out. You may even spray something, clean it nicely, get a new fresh cloth, again wipe it, let it dry. You try to see your face. The reflected surface of the mirror will give you the exact reflection that you want. You will be able to see your face in it. But before, because it was covered by mud, it was covered by a thick layer of dust, you were not able to do that. But going through that cleaning process, we are able to achieve what we want. Now that mirror is serving the purpose that it should be serving. Before, yes, it was a piece of glass, a reflecting surface. But as the layer was on top of it, we had to go through that cleaning process. In spiritual life, we call it purification process. Anything we do, even this kind of reading we do for 7 days, sometimes for 9 days. That time in the beginning, we do the Achman, Om Keshwaya, Om Narayana, Om Madhavaya. Sometimes Vishesh Ashtam. Sometimes we sprinkle ourselves, we sprinkle the host, sprinkle everybody in the room. Apavitra, Pitrova, Sarvavasthanam Vatopiya, Yasvaret Gunolikaksham Sabhabhyam Parati. Think of Radha Govinda, and this way we purify inside and out. So, that we have to go through that endeavor in order to remove the desires dominated by mode of passion, because it is stronger than that desire dominated by mode of goodness. Smoke was a different thing. Just by blowing a little bit, smoke will go away and it will ablaze, kindle the fire, and will serve the purpose. But this is a little stronger. So, in order to see our reflection in the mirror, we have to wipe it out and go through this purification process. Now the third one was about when the mother gets pregnant, the baby is inside, she has not given the birth, with the head down and the legs up in a very awkward, weird position. Whatever mother is eating, drinking, whether the child likes the taste or no, is in such an awkward position where it's simply a stinking place and all it smells is urine and stool and all that kind of thing. So he has no choice. He cannot even extend his hands, cannot extend the legs, and whatever little bubble is given to him in the body, he has to be there for long, long time. 9 months is a very long time for a child. But it's like hell. But that's the way it is. So, what is the solution? The time and regulated living or self-preparations are necessary to eliminate a deep-rooted task. Tamasic desires. Tamasic is a desires dominated by mode of ignorance. So this tamasic desires need some kind of self-preparations. It needs a lot of time, regulated living, and that's the only way to eliminate the deep-rooted tamasic desires. Because the time factor and the self-discipline, healthy environment, eating good, exercise, these are the factors for embryo to develop and be delivered as a baby. So, as a patch of cloud hides the blazing sun, mind in form of desires hides the cloud. Right? Here it says the desires hiding the soul. Knowledge. Knowledge is attribute. It's a guna. But gunavan, one who has these attributes, is actually known, is exhibited by means of these virtues or the attributes that he has. So, we are, or our soul, or Atman, call it the Brahman, whatever you want to label as. But it is Satchidananda Vigraha. Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakara. So the Sat is eternal. Chit is full of bliss, knowledge, right? And Anand. So, out of that, the knowledge is actually covered by means of this kind of desires. Three kind of desires. Desire dominated by mode of goodness, desire dominated by mode of passion, and desires dominated by mode of ignorance. So three kind of examples were given. One of a fire covered by smoke, second a mirror covered by dust, and third an embryo covered by the womb. So, desire which weighs the spiritual light of man by transforming itself into threefold evils. So just like here, we talked about three kinds of desires. A desire which weighs the spiritual light of a man by transforming itself into threefold evils. What are those threefold evils? One is a distraction. Second is impurity. And the third is exclusion. It obscures. So, it obstruction, there is this, you can't, just like embryo is covered by womb and strapped inside. You can't even see it, or the thing inside also cannot come out, breaking it. And for a long, long time it has suffered. So, number one, if you go through the distraction, which is like a fire covered by smoke, that kind of desire is, even though unsteady, the smoke is unsteady. Smoke covers a fire, even so the evil of distraction. You are distracted, which is of the nature of the restlessness. When you are restless, you feel you are distracted. There is no way you can focus it. And that covers your knowledge. Knowledge cannot be illuminated until the mind has become calm and steady. When you're calm and steady, yes, you can understand. And you can apply knowledge to the worldly affairs. But once your mind is disturbed, when you are distracted from your goal, from your aim, from what you're doing, and you're feeling unrest, that is time you cannot focus on anything. And knowledge cannot be applied because it's not illuminated until the mind has become calm and steady. It remains dormant and hidden. It will not come out as knowledge. It will not help in solving the problem or dealing with the situation. The second thing, the dirt, is a symbol of impurity. And sinful mind cannot judge correctly. Impurity right away tells you about how impure our thoughts are, how impure our understanding is, how impure are our resolutions, how impure are our answers to the beautiful questions. Everything we do is all polluted by dust, it's covered by mud. So what happens that knowingly or unknowingly we create an impious environment, impious activities. So his mind is diluted by ignorance, gets attached to the delights of sleep, lethargy, and indolence. So, what does a child do in the womb of a mother? Sleep, right? Sometimes pains, too much of pain and sorrow, no place to go, nowhere. So, in that kind of the desire based on the mode of ignorance gets attached to the delights of sleep, lethargy, and indolences. Never exercises this reasoning faculties. Yes, everyone is intelligent, at least, right? Man, buddhi, chitta, ahankar, if you analyze your antahkaran, look into your heart, mind is there. You are a human being. God has given you enough intelligence. Yes, buddhi is there. Chit is there. Memory is there. And your self-respect is also there. But the thing is that you cannot exercise the reasoning faculties. So, all living entities are covered by different degrees of lust. Now, these degrees of lust can be analyzed in 3 ways. One degree is very thin. You can use the word thin. The smoke and the fire. Fire is thin. Fire is not even, the smoke is thin. The smoke is not even very strong. A simple blow can take care of the fire. Right? So this is a thin kind of degree. Then there is a thick, a little thicker than thin. And that's why that example was given about the dust on the mirror. So this living entity are covered by different degrees, and the second degree is little thicker. And the last one is the thickest. Thin, thick, and thickest. So when it is a thin, we can still make a little progress in our spiritual life. It's It's not that bad. Our intelligence is a little bit covered, but we have to know that right now there is a little cloud very near to our eyes, and it blocks the sun from our eyes. We are not able to see the sun, but the blazing sun is still shining in the sky above that cloud. So we should not be disappointed that what's happening. We can't even see the sun. The sun, so strong, is covered by this insignificant cloud. Yes, cloud can do that. But the thing is that is also sun's activity. The ocean is actually warms up, right? The water is heated by sunlight, and then it makes the cloud. Same clouds are rising in the sky, and at certain level, it's trying to cover the sky by means of so much of cloud, which blocks the sun rays. We cannot even see the sun. So, this way, there is a thin layer on our knowledge, there is a little thicker layer on our knowledge, and there is very, very thick layer also on our knowledge. But everyone has a, what you call, outlet to that, solution to that. So, when the layer is thin, one can make progress in spiritual life. As Prabhupada just mentioned, where we read the purport, that in this kind of situation, any neophyte devotee or even a senior devotee could be expert. But once the knowledge is challenged, then what happens? That just like a little bit of blow on the smoke, remove the smoke and kindles the fire. Similarly, we can, by chanting the name of the Lord, we can always come back to our original position of the Krishna conscious devotee. And the environment that shakes us up, makes us forget, and distract us, we can again start focusing our spiritual life and start living like a devotee. It's not a big deal. So as long as there is a thin layer, we should not be worried about. We can handle, we can take care of it, and still we can make a progress in spiritual life. Now, the thicker layer, as we say, you have to go through the purification process, the cleaning process, right? So that's a little endeavor. But if we have to do, we can do that. So we can even handle that kind of situation also. And the third, which is very difficult and almost impossible to tackle, and it is like being in hell for anyone, not even for a child, for everyone. And the reason is this one. The fire or smoke, that example is given for the human beings. We are devotees. Every single day, every step, padam, padam, vipadam, will come from that kind of situation, and we will go into that kind of situation, and we have to tackle that kind of situation. every single day. Smoke and fire, smoke and keep blowing and keep kindling a blazing fire of our spiritual life. Because obstructions are going to be there, no matter what. Because this is a material world. But that was for human beings. The dust and a mirror, it goes for birds and beasts. The bird and the beast, they will have to actually go through a purification process, a tremendous endeavor to purify oneself. For example, Bharat Raja was there. And he was a purified soul, he was a self-realized person. But think what happened, that he was very merciful to a little baby deer. And he kept thinking, Antakalechi Mamevam Swaranukta Kalevaram. When he was leaving the body, instead of thinking of Krishna, I was thinking about the little baby deer who didn't come in time. If it came in time, Bharat Raja would have said, oh, the baby is okay. But since he didn't see the baby while dying, he was thinking about the baby deer, and ultimately he got a body of a deer. But he was a self-realized person. And he figured out right away, how come I'm in this body? 8,400,000 species of life. I could have chosen any body. But why God put me in this body? Why? Because I was thinking about the little baby deer. So, this mirror and dust example is given for the birds and beasts. Can they come out of there? Yes. Bharat Raja right away started eating some straws dried out. He would fast, minimum eating, minimum drinking, just to keep the body and soul together. And living that kind of pious activity where didn't bother any other living entity and just meditate once more on the names of the Lord and left his body thinking of Krishna and went back to Godhead. So that kind of endeavor is required when you have to tackle desires after more passion. And embryo and a womb, that example is given for the trees. Can you imagine the trees are the same living beings, just like you and me. They have the soul, they have the life. They are all senses that you can think of. And they live a life just like you and me. Only thing, they cannot go from one place to other. Do they breathe? Yes. Do they eat? Yes. Do they drink? Yes. Right? Do they produce babies? Yes, fruits and flowers and twigs. Right? There is a tree in California which is 700 years old. It's long, long time. 700 years old. The rain comes, the sun comes out. Freezing temperatures, snow. Sometimes the water is just trying to uproot the tree forcefully. The wind comes and goes. 700 years, just like a sage, the tree has to pass that time. But that's a living being. The mode of ignorance creates that kind of desires, and that kind of desires gives us that kind of body also. So, whatever we talk about is actually either for a human being, for birds and beasts, and also for the um, trees and all that. There are four kinds of living beings. Of course, there are 8,400,000 species of life, but the source is only out of the four things. One is Sweda. Swed is perspiration. In our perspiration also there is the ability to create living. So the germs and that kind of thing, insects that we can even see closely, those are produced in perspiration. That's what is known as Sveda. Sveda means perspiration. Ja means takes birth. Another is Udbija, like a mango tree. There is a seed of a mango, and the whole tree comes out from there. It creates thousands and thousands of mangoes, and those mangoes again can create thousands of mango trees. That's their ability. But everything is coming from a seed. Krishna says, yes, all these things are coming out of seed, but I am the seed-giving Father. Aham bija pradah pita. I am Pita, I am Father. And bija means seed. I am seed-giving Father. So it's coming from Krishna. So we talked about Sweda, we talked about Udbija, the trees are coming from seed. And then there is a Jarayuja. You and me and lot of animals, and they all come by the union of male and female. And when they unite, they can produce and generate a baby. So that is a Jarayuja. And then Andaja is a birds. The birds are born from an egg. So a bird will lay the egg, and then that egg will grow, and ultimately the bird comes out of it and lives as a bird and produces another bird. So this is the cycle. So we all have to go through this, and this particular verse is applicable to every living being. There is not a single, person who is not bothered by this particular problem. Problem we saw is that lust is not leaving anybody aside. It will attack every one of us. Yes, the degree of its attack or its reaction may differ, like we discussed, but still all the living beings go through the particular task. Except the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he says, Janma karma cha me divyam. So if you go through that, then we know that we cannot include certain celestial personalities for God Himself. Here it says, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains the eternal abode, right? Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha tattva deham punarjanma neti nameti arjuna. One who knows the transcendent nature of my appearance and activities does not upon leaving the body take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. So, since God has a transcendent nature, he is not actually affected by that. But we are all. So, today I will try to, I don't know whether you can see this, but I try to sketch it out something, and I call this here the world of objects, which is made out of earth, water, fire, air, and earth. And it is all full of sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. And when Surya Narayana, the sun comes out, and his mercy falls on us, it gives us strength to see. The power of seeing is coming from him. His light falls on our eyeball. His light also falls on the object. And we start seeing the object. From the object, we start seeing also the objective mind is here, and the subjective mind, which is the buddhi, intelligence, is right behind us. But then the desires that we are talking about, it could be egoistic desire, it could be desires coming from the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance, or it could be impulse, filter, vasanas, something not from this particular birth, but even from previous birth. So there is a kind of lens, a layer between objective mind and a subjective mind. And what happens that whatever we see, we are receiving is going through that particular lens of vasana or samskaras that we already have from previous birth. Or some of them we collected from this life. And whatever egoistic desires are there, everything is there as a layer, and it passes through. And then once it goes inside, then what happens? It changes the color of intelligence. Color means this whole thing in the previous case, I showed that it was all yellow. But now when I introduce this particular blue line in between, then yellow plus blue became green. So it is a polluted intelligence. Now, because of the desires, we don't see what we used to see before. All of a sudden the desires has affected our intelligence. It has already affected our knowledge. It has already affected the opinion about the objects that we see. So here I say reception and response. So once you receive, it's going through that particular layer of desires. And once you project it back as a response, as an opinion about that particular, or our attitude or action against that particular object, we have to again pass through that particular gate or lens of desires. And the impulse of filter, vasana, is acting, is very, very strong this way. So, we have to watch out with all these things. And divine personalities, they don't have to worry. In Vrindavan, there is a temple, Shaligram temple, is like about more than 1 foot tall, huge Shaligram. And one time, one thief, he broke into And usually Shaligram worship is simple. They bring some water from Yamuna, they bring little milk, and they pour it on the Shaligram. Then they put some tulsi leaves or a flower petal or something like that. Nothing much. Not a glorious, what you call, puja like what we offer here, Radha Krishna. So the thief broke into the temple middle of the night and wanted to steal something, but what was steal? What is it going to do with Shaligram? Right? He thought it's just a piece of stone. And what is left with some tulsi leaves and some spots of milk. He couldn't get anything. So he looked around, but there was a brass bell hanging from the Shaligram. So he said, well, I'll take this bell and sell it. Whatever comes, I will eat my sandwich. So he stepped on the Shaligram and he pulled out that brass bell to steal. Suddenly he sees the Lord Vishnu appear before him. Shanti Chakravadapamo Varmala Vibhushitam. The story goes like this, that the thief was really surprised to see Lord Vishnu 400 form, right? Conch shell and lotus flower and club and disc, and was scared to death because one who is equipped with all these kind of equipments, right, then he can definitely kill you. So he right away offer obeisances and say, I'm sorry. I'm a thief. I came to steal. And now you saw me and you caught me red-handed. Now do whatever you have to do. So Lord Vishnu says, no, don't worry about that. On the contrary, I appreciate. So far, anybody is entering the temple is giving me patram pushpam phalam toyam. They just poured some water on me. They poured little milk on me. They put a tulsi leaf on me or a flower petal on me. But you climb on my head. He put his foot on the Shaligram, climb up to get the bell, to steal the bell. So he says what it means, that you offered yourself to me. Nobody did that before. So what is trying to say? The Janma Karma Chandi. The God never takes offenses of anybody. And all these things that what we are talking about, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance, and the desires, and the results, and their what you call whatever solutions are given here, the time and everything else, how to get rid of the tamasic desires, how to take care of desires dominated by goodness and passion, right? Nothing is required for them to tackle this desire because the Maya doesn't even touch them. So this is whatever is there, it's for us. And finally it says that therefore, O mighty arm, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. So we have to keep praying for our steady intelligence. We don't want any distraction. We don't want any kind of impurities in our heart. No distraction, no impurities. And definitely we don't any obscuration we don't want to get trapped in the situation for a long, long time and worry about our intelligence getting covered by that. So tasmad yasya mahabaho nigruhitani sarvashaha indriyani indriyarthebhyo tasya prajna pratisthita. All we can do is with folded hands. We can ask from Krishna that our senses be restrained from the objects and we can be steady in serving and doing devotional service to Shri Shri Radha. Otherwise, Vacho vegam, manasat krodam vegam, jivva vegam, udar upastha vegam. Etan veganyo, vishet dhiraha, sarvam dhima prithvim sishyata. It says, a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and urges of the tongue, belly, and genital, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So here I think art is going on, and let us start singing Aarti with this message. We'll be singing Gaura Aarti. Those who are watching home, if you can afford and you have time, please try to offer the incense, the ghee lamp, and if you have water, hanky, flower, charmer and fan, a conch shell, you can use these paraphernalias to please the Lord and do the aarti. Ki bajayo jaya gaura-chande, aarti ko shobha. Ki bajayo jaya gaura-chande, aarti ko shobha. शंखा बाजे घंटा बाजे मधुर 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 बाजे 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 Jai 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 Yadavaya Madhavaya Krishnaaya Namaha. Yadavaya Madhavaya Krishnaaya Namaha. Gopal Govinda Ram Parivrakacharya Stotra Sada Bhakti Vedanta Swami Chitra Prabhupada ki
Jai
Bhakti
Prabhupada.
Siddhanta Goswami Maharaj ki
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava
Jai.
Namacharya Hadas Thakur
Jai.
Prem Se Koshna Chaitanya Bhum Tham Shri Dveda Gava Shiva Sri Gauri
Jai.
Antarup Maya Pradhan
Jai.
Vrindavan
Jai.
Tulsi Devi
Jai.
Bhakti Devi
Jai.
Samaved Bhakti Vindi
Jai.
Lord Heavenly
Hello.
all mistress of the doers,
Hare Krishna.
all mistress of the doers,
Hare Krishna.
all mistress,
Hare Krishna.
all mistress, Guru and
Shri
Guru.
Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya
Namaste Narsimhaya.
Prahlada
Kalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Jaya Narsinga Deva महाराज की जय की जय की जय.
Thanks for joining. We'll see you now Saturday at 5 o'clock. Please come
Saturday
for
morning,
Gita.
morning Bhagavad.
And also morning we have Bhagavatam class at 7 o'clock in the morning. So please join us. Hare Krishna.